Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of Action Awareness, I want to talk about Grimm's Blessing of the Grimm's Fairy Tales. This is another card that I just need to read off verbatim. Play on a base. Ongoing. If you have 2 or more minions here, treat this card as if it also has the names of every minion you own. Using this ability does not count as using any minion's ability. If you are confused by this, you are not alone. It was just as confusing to determine the card text as it was to determine what the card does. This is a truly unique card, one that comes with a fairly lengthy clarification. But since the clarification pretty much covers half of what would normally be the video, I won't go into it specifically. What does this card do? Sometimes it's easier to think about what it cannot do. There are things it can do for the Grimms. There are a few things it can do for others. There are things that it could almost do that would have been really interesting that unfortunately it cannot. In a nutshell, Grimm's Blessing solves a major Grimm's problem. Their cards depend on each other, and you have to draw them in order. The Grimminions are played in pairs. Hansel is pretty useless without Gretel. Same for Rose Red and the other Snow White. These cards are expecting cards specified by name. Fortunately, Grimm's Blessing can take the name of all minions you own. To do this, you need 2 minions on Grimm's Blessing's base. Generally, one of those minions is the minion who is expecting their partner, while the other is a minion to act as the proxy. Grimm's Blessing allows you to substitute the second minion for the named minion, but does this by taking the minion name itself. It is not, however, a minion. If you notice, Big Bad Wolf, Red Riding Hood, and the Woodsman's Axe all say the Minion X in order to prevent Grimm's Blessing from being a problem. There's also the unusual clause at the end, that using this ability does not count as using any minion's ability. This means that Grimm's Blessing won't wound a Shinobi, Classic Rocker, Water Lily, Tenacious Z, Disguised Penguin, or Sea Star. As it turns out, there are more examples of Grimm's Blessing not interfering with cards than there are of Grimm's Blessing doing anything. This is largely because Grimm's Blessing is never a minion. Grimm's Blessing can take the name War Raptor, which means that your actual War Raptors would increase by 1 power, but it doesn't become a War Raptor itself. 2 War Raptors would think that there are 3, for a total of 10 power and a gain of 2. At most, 4 Raptors would think that there is another Raptor for a gain of 4. Which is nice, and I really like Grimm Dinosaurs, but that is not how I play the combination. It's honestly a waste, but it does work. Similarly, to be considered a Microbot, you have to have Microbot in your name. Grimm's Blessing would take the name Microbot Fixer, or Microbot Anything, and therefore get +1 power for each fixer that is in play. Also, if Grimm's Blessing can get power from Fixer because it is a Microbot, then the Alpha can get power from Grimm's Blessing because it cares about Microbots, not minions. It just happens to turn minions into Microbots, which is 3 total power, again nice, but not really how the card should be used. And unless I am forgetting anything, that's all the card does for NonGrimms. It wants to be helpful for Innsmouth, but it fails because Grimm's Blessing is not a minion. Therefore, it wouldn't qualify to be the source of a minion name for spreading the word. Return to the Sea and Mystery of the Deep care about minions with the same name, which Grimm's Blessing can never be. Even Dagon cares about minions with the same name, which leaves Grimm's Blessing out of the equation. It's ironic that the other faction that cares most about minion names cannot actually use Grimm's Blessing. So other than a few corner cases, this is a card that only the Grimms care about. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that because of how critical this card is to the Grimms. The short version of this story is that I absolutely hated this faction for the longest time. Then a few of us made some key suggestions that resulted in a change to this card, the Charming Princess and Prince Charming. I really wanted the power couple to be a professor without madness, which is really powerful. I bet you know where I got the idea. But there's a problem, one that was solved by making Grimm's Blessing a double feature. 1 copy isn't enough. It has to be 2. With the Charming Princess and Prince Charming on the same base, you have an incredibly powerful engine that will fire once and then immediately get broken up. you are committing 8 power to the base, plus the extra minion, which is localized, and that isn't an easy engine to set up. Teamwork becomes a necessity, and it drew too much attention. Instead, Grimm's Blessing could take the place of one of the two and allow you to split them up on different bases. But if you only had one copy, you couldn't use the engine simultaneously, and thus I argued profusely that they needed 2 copies. This way, if something happened to one of the bases, you don't lose your engine. In fact, you can use Teamwork to facilitate the distributed engine because the extra minion doesn't have to be played on the same base. Additionally, you can use Teamwork to get your Grimminions, and although Teamwork is a double feature, so are the Grimminion pairs. There was simply too much heavy lifting put into too few cards, so letting Grimm's Blessing work with both 4s really opened up the faction and made them actually playable for me. You can have an action engine on one base and a minion engine on another. When one of those bases scores, you can use Teamwork to retrieve the other from the discard pile and play it again. If you wait a bit, you can have 2 distributed engines and eventually combine them for a 3rd engine base, which should be all you need. This action is a necessity to bring out the best in your minions, and even using just one Grimminion on the Charming Princess base is worthwhile, since it has all the card names. In fact, it doesn't matter which Grimminion you use. You can use Rose Red and Gretel, and both would get their benefits if they were the only minion on the Grimm's Blessing base. I like to use my minion engine quicker and persist my action engine, unless I have movement to move the extra minions off. While I have never axed the Big Bad Wolf, I do enjoy creating the Charming engine, and Grimm's Blessing is the key to making that happen. Because of its uniqueness, it's really hard to find synergies for this card, but it is a play on base action, which has value. This is a great play for the mechanic, especially since the action can be played on any base. So you could unexpectedly create the engine while competing on another base, and I can't wait to try killing the Big Bad Wolf to grab a mechanic and a Charming, while having the mechanic grab Grimm's Blessing. As a play on base action, the truckers are well equipped to move it. This allows you to keep your engine in play as the base starts to get crowded. The truckers can even take an engine that is currently firing and use Cab Over Pete to split it up, using the extra action to play Grimm's Blessing. Both the Steampunks and the truckers have the recursion to play the action again, which is useful since the Grimm can recycle a few cards. Also, you have to protect against the disenchant. But by and large, this action exists to serve the Grimm, and it serves them well. It could have been much more, but I often say that a faction needs internal synergy first, and this card greatly helps with that. What do you think of Grimm's Blessing? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.